Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And so last week, well, I've basically been doing the Warzone extraction sites. On the first day with the respawn problem, it was quite a chore, but it must be said that CCP has fixed that pretty quickly. So now even if you don't complete the sites, when you leave it, the sites will quickly despawn. And so at this point, when you find a Warzone extraction site, you can be pretty sure that you can actually run it, get the sleepers to spawn, and thus work on your quest, which well, does take a little bit of time. On average for me, we're talking 3 sites in order to actually complete the kill 20 sleepers, because usually I do bump into someone and then I'm helping them for a couple, and that is, I think, where the biggest mistake with Warzone extraction has been so far. They've made it harder. It takes a long time to kill those sleepers, but then they have completely disincentivized you to play with other players and to help them out, because it's only if you get the loot that you also get the sleepers to count towards the quest. And as a result, this does feel like quite a little bit of a chore, and that's probably a missed opportunity. I do know that they want the agency to become a tool where you can also find content and group content, even if it's not with players from your corporation. But this would have been a great opportunity to sort of give people the chance to do that stuff a little bit more together, rather than to feel forced to be solo, because it's only your sleeper kills that'll count towards your quest, which is, well, a little bit of a strange design choice. We are here for the market, of course, and as always, we are going to start off with plex. That's going to be at 155. There we go. And for that, of course, we take out the filters, because most of these sales actually are no longer happening in Jita, I don't think, but around Jita. We can see here 3,005,000 ISK for the first seller coming in, 535 of them in the perimeter station. If we go down, you can see it's quite a lot up until we actually reach Jita. This is still one jump out, this is still one jump out, and in Jita they're selling for 3,093 million. That's quite a wide margin between Jita and non-Jita, so we must see some sort of movement. The buyers are just below 3 million, and the price chart is still looking pretty flat right around the 3 million mark. That's quite interesting. So I would say that if I'm not mistaken from last week, Jita prices have gone up, but the prices in the trade hubs are not moving, or maybe even down a little bit, just above 3 million. I don't think we were that close to it last week, and so you can see that the trade for plex has definitely moved from Jita to these trade ups. It also makes complete sense. This is something that you can actually move in full safety, doesn't take cargo, and so there is no reason to pay those higher taxes, and most of those trades have definitely been taken up by these player trade hubs, which potentially, if they're not at 0% tax, can actually make them quite a bit of ISK, the owners, that is. Next up, we have the multiple pilot training certificates. That one still needed a little bit more correction, because with plex being so flat, we're talking around 1.5 billion for a month, and the multiple pilot training certificate is actually a little bit cheaper than that, and in fact is going down to less than 1.3 billion ISK. Yeah, 1.268 for the first seller. It's only one though in Jita station. That's probably gonna get picked up pretty quickly because it's just above the buyers, and so you could say 1.3 billion, a bit above that for most sellers, which is quite interesting when we look at these average prices actually going below 1.3 billion. That does mean that people are not that interested in the training certificates at the price of more than 1.3 billion, and so, you know, it's actually buy orders that tend to get filled here. People want to get rid of those training certificates, and they're willing to take less than 1.3 billion on at least some of these trades. Next up, we have the skill extractor, 338 million. Again, quite a lot of sales of these happening in the trade hubs, but it's definitely less, because it's still risky. It takes effort, it takes cargo to move that stuff from Jita to a trade hub, and so you can see that we don't have to browse that far, and especially in Jita, 350 million, into trade hubs 338.5 million, 339 million, much smaller margin than with plex, which is actually quite interesting. The buyers of these extractors 337 million, so very narrow margin between the sellers and the buyers once again, and there's another decently flat chart, up a little bit at the tail end toward 350 million, but basically of course this is a mirror of the plex market. Next up here we've got the large scale injectors, flat with a slight uptrend, so that's very similar, basically the same movement as skill extractors, and so I'm not going to look or to try to find more behind this slight uptick than there actually is. We would need to see this go up towards 800 million to be able to say that, yeah, there is some substantial amount of skill points in demand at the moment. I'm not really seeing that here. This is just normal market fluctuation, I think. 795 million for the sellers of these large scale injectors. Again, there is definitely trade happening in the trade hubs, but you don't have to go that much higher in price and that much lower in the sell orders to get the GTA station at 807.4 million. Still a difference, right? There's definitely a barrier here. Less than 800 million in the player-owned trade hubs, more than 800 million, by actually quite a bit in GTA station, and the buyers are at 775 million ISK for the large skill injectors. Next up here we've got the small skill injectors, and this is in my opinion pretty damn interesting because this looks a lot more like a trend break. We've got 5-day moving average clearly going back up, but also the median daily price is going up above 160 million. So this might be that indication that there might be this demand, probably, if I would have to guess, then because of the new skills for moon mining, right? You need to get ready for that at some point. And some players that have really big operations, they might have been interested in just straight up buying the skill injectors for that as well, making sure that they get the skill points. But yeah, it's not translating in the large skill injector just yet, but the small skill injector is indicating this increased demand for skill points. Another possibility is that we're talking alpha clones and newer players that want to go for those small skill injectors first for very specific ships, and that for some reason there's more of those around. That's possible as well. These are currently selling for 159 million ISK in the trade ups, 161.6 in GTA station itself, and the buyers are at 151 million ISK for that small skill injector. Pretty interesting market. So I think that there are some forces that are wanting to drive the price up, but it's probably just not the right time to do so. We've got the Vegas coming, we've got the expansion coming. All of that should put either a bit more supply or is a good time for CCP to try and put up more sales so that they can drive more players into the game. It all makes sense to do that with the Vegas, with the expansion, and then of course in the winter we have the holiday seasons as well. So I'm starting to not expect a massive explosion in Plex or anything like that anymore. In fact, if the expansion is successful, and this could actually be a pretty major thing because it is focused on HiSec, so on newer players, on new PvE content. If it is successful in grabbing players and bring them to the game, then this could actually translate into more Plex supply and thus perhaps start to put some pressure on the price. That's a big if, but who knows. Let's move on though. It's time for some minerals next. That's going to be at 8:45. Okay, as always, we'll start with the smallest one, normally the cheapest one. Here is Titanium. All right, bit of a pullback. It had to happen at some point, I think, especially with the Imperium probably being back into full swing when it comes to their mining activities. We have to give some ground from around 6 ISK to 5.5 ISK at the moment. So we've got we can definitely get rid of that filter. 574 for the sellers and 568 for the buyers. Pretty narrow margin, a little bit above 5.5 ISK, so we didn't lose that much ground. But I guess 6 ISK was not all that sustainable when there's not a lot of or as much destruction going on in nullsec as there was when the Imperium would actually deploy. So that makes a pretty big difference. It's definitely also something to keep in mind for future possible activities, future possible wars in nullsec. You sort of start to see how the market can react when it's really the big guys that move in a big way. So 5.7, let's see what Pyrite is doing. That's quite unfortunate. I thought maybe this was a good opportunity for Pyrite to overtake Tritanium again and to bring that order back, but doesn't look like that's gonna happen because Pyrite is under pressure as well. 5.5 is for the sellers and the buyers coming in at 5.34. Very, very cheap Pyrite still on the market. Mexilon could be interesting and is very interesting because this does point towards more nullsec activity. As we all know by now, I think Mexilon is the bottleneck mineral for a nullsec. They just can't mine enough of that compared to everything else, and so this is the expected result of more nullsec mining and of course also of more nullsec production activity. So maybe the Imperium says that 1,000 faxes and carriers is not enough. They're probably gonna go for 2,000 next time. And as a result, they need the Mexilon from HiSec to keep their production lines going at full bore, but they have extra Tritanium, they have extra Pyrite, and thus those are coming to the market, and Mexilon is leaving the market and is going up to 80 ISK once again. So 77.29 for sellers, so a little bit of selling happening. That is normal as well. If you have some stocks lying around and you're aware of these, then you could have bought these for 75, and now on the way back up to 80, you're trying to, of course, unload those again. But 77.3 for the sellers, 75 for the buyers of Mexilon. Definitely, once again, the mineral to focus on if you're a HiSec miner. Isogen, okay, that's unexpected, actually going up in the last week or so. I would have thought that that would have been the exact opposite, but that's not happening. 57.48, still a lot cheaper than Mexilon, which doesn't make too much sense historically speaking. 54.48 for Isogen as well. 30 million here, 100 million here. There is some demand. I would say that there might just be some investment volumes happening here. That would be my gamble on this, because I mean, Isogen being this cheap, at some point this is probably the one that has the most potential. If you look at pre-ascension prices, I'm quickly gonna go over that. Tritanium, you know, we lost it a little bit, but we were very close to that. Pyrite from 6 to 9, that's around a third. Then you've got Mexilon, which is of course still at pre doing really well. But then Isogen could go from 50 to like 90 ISK in value. And so I think that, yeah, some bottom fishers are coming in here. And when they see the opportunity, stock up on Isogen. I'm not purchasing extra at the moment, but I'm keeping all of my Isogen aside for a better sell opportunity later down the line. And then finally we have Noxium, which is on a slow descent. The increase in price to above 400 ISK was quite sharp, apparently unsustainable, and as a result we have to slowly slide back towards 390. 390 ISK for the sellers, 365 for the buyers. So a quieter time. I'm not gonna say that there's no action happening in nullsec. There's always action happening here and there, but with the Imperium, I think back on the mining regimen, I think that yeah, the mineral prices are going to stay under pressure a little bit, and we are likely to see lower prices. Except of course for Mexilon, if there's one thing that the Imperium will be interested in importing, it's gonna be that. For the nullsec minerals, of course, we are also expecting more supply coming in. Then as a result, we can see that those prices are going down towards 1100 again as well. 1133 for the sellers and 1095 for the buyers. If this has enough momentum and we again play with the price of 1000 ISK, you know what to do. I think this chart is pretty clear. Megasite next here, very same thing, was stepping up towards 1500, 1400, but now has to give back all of that ground, selling again for 1320, and the buyers are at 1212. They want to see cheaper Megasite, that is for sure. So yeah, that is normal if what is happening, and it seems to be happening, is that in nullsec things are quieting down a little bit and the Imperium is back in full swing with their ore calls. Then this is pretty normal. And finally we have more fights. That does mean that that sell opportunity will be over as well, of course. The peak at 12,000 ISK is over. We are now at 11k, 11,400 for the sellers, 10,800 for the buyers. Again, pretty wide margin here. And then the bad news, of course, 244,000 units, 146,000 units, several more close to 100,000 units. It's gonna be oversupply time, and I think Morphite will correct towards 10k pretty quickly. So the good times are over for Tritanium, but you know, this gives you a bit of an idea of what happens when a big war, a nullsec major deployment happens, and there are a lot of losses. There's less mining activity there. It's great for the mineral market, but it doesn't last eternally, of course. Let's move on to some PI. That's going to be at 1530. There we go, and let's take a look at these. Of course, I think that most big alliances are prepping enough resources for all of their refineries that they'll need to put up in order to keep their moon mining business going. Some of the smaller entities, I would say, might lower the count because of course you'll need an active mining fleet to actually be able to grab those resources. So it's gonna be tricky to say exactly where this is going, but these are the construction blocks, basically holding below 13,000 ISK, 12,800 for the sellers, 12,375 for the buyers, maybe a bit above average but not by too much, so okay to sell, I would say. Consumer electronics next. Alright, the drop off is happening right here. Start at 15k, and then in around a week we lost the prices down to 13k. That's quite a lot. So the sellers, though, that's quite strange. Are we seeing like a volume spike? Yeah, we are seeing a volume spike, but someone must have come in and completed quite a few buy orders all of a sudden. In order to get this result, sellers still at 14,900, almost 14,850 pretty much. And then buyers at 13,200. Someone must have come in with a pretty big volume here and actually filled up a lot of buy orders, which is a little bit strange. So a nice drop off for consumer electronics, but the only way that you're going to take advantage of that is try to pick up some buy orders. And if buyers come in, if demand stays strong for consumer electronics, we're actually going to go back up pretty quickly here. Very strange situation. Coolants under pressure a little bit as well, going below 12,000 ISK. On average, 12,500 for the sellers, 11,900 for the buyers. And that is probably on the average, I would say, actually 12,000 for the buyers, 12,500 for the sellers. That's just the average price for coolants. In general, I think we're right on the money here. Enriched uranium next. Alright, also coming off from a high point, so we went as high as almost 17,500 ISK, a little bit below that. Now 15,600 on average. Sellers 15,800, buyers 15,200. This is the normal pattern that we would expect on this lower chart. It's more supply coming in, driving the price down over the course of a couple pages from 18,000 down to 15,800. And so now people have to start competing with that price to go back down. Price wise, this is still okay, right? This is definitely not bad for enriched uranium. More than 15,000 ISK is still pretty damn reasonable. Integrity response drones slowly going back down, but from a pretty high point. Of course, it's all about the refineries and the expansion. 3.2 million for the sellers, 3.1 million for the buyers. It's gonna be expensive if you want and need to put up a refinery. And so maybe at this point, I'm gonna mention it, but I'm not sure what I'm gonna do just yet. But someone requested that I keep the detail operations going for a longer time. I'm thinking about it, and of course these prices might just be the make that the right move. I could extend my stay in detail by a couple of months, and then just slowly wait for better PI prices, and then build up my refinery and maybe look for the right opportunity to buy or create a large structure as well. The problem is that I do want to get in on the wars, on the resource wars as well, and so I would like to do that with the Galente. So those are the two forces in between. It's between what I want to do in EVE itself and the pragmatic choice that it might just be not a bad idea to keep the detail operations running for a couple of months so that I get lower PI prices and thus a lower price for the new structures that I want to put up in Gal in this space. So no promises just yet. We'll see what I decide to do on that end. Mechanical parts coming under pressure as well, getting to 12,000 ISK, so 12,500 for the sellers, 12,000 for the buyers, right on the averages on the entire chart. Yeah, buyers right here, definitely average price, and of course again having to give ground from the high price point at this point. Nuclear reactors next. That is an interesting one. I love that this was suggested to add here because it has this awesome volatility where it often dips below 100,000 ISK, which creates very clear and visible buy opportunities. And here is yet another nice sell opportunity, selling for 134,000 is 126,000 for the buyers. Very, very interesting and nice PI material. I mean, we're talking 1, 2, 3, 4 sell opportunities over the course of a year, and 1, 2, 3 very clear and defined buy opportunities as well. And going from 75,000 ISK to 130,000 ISK is very, very nice profit. This is a very interesting specialized PI material, to be honest here. At the moment, great sell opportunity for nuclear reactors. And if a couple months ago you bought this for 80, 19,000 ISK, definitely consider doing so, grabbing your profits. Oxygen next. That couldn't keep going up, of course, went close to 600 on 5-day moving averages. That was pretty expensive, but it finally happened. We are crashing down. How low? That's the question. 540 ISK for the sellers, not too bad. 500 for the buyers, still a bit above average. The buyers are coming close to that average, though a bit more supply is gonna put us right back there. Good news for fuel blocks, I think. Those should stay decently stable. Here are the robotics as well. After a final jump up to 110,000 ISK is now giving back that ground as well. 105,000 for the sellers, 100,000 for the buyers. Maybe a touch above average, but really not by much anymore. And you can see that clearly the trend here is that we are getting more supply than demand. Rocket fuel, it's back in its normal range as well. In fact, at the tail end we're reaching that 12,500 ISK, which is pretty normal. 12,000, almost 13,000 for the sellers, 12,400 for the buyers. Buyers around average, sellers still a little bit above average for rocket fuel. Self-harmonizing power cores, of course, structure related, so still going for 3 million for the sellers, 2.8 million for the buyers. It's gonna take some time for that to recover. Superconductors, heading back to 15,000 is interesting. 16,400 for the sellers, 13,600 for the buyers. Extremely wide margin here, so great if you can sell these. And the buyers are still a bit above average, but I would definitely work on having the patience for the sell orders here, because you're getting that nice 16,000 ISK for superconductors. Test cultures finally. That was a nice jump up here, and we are already on our way down though. So 11,700 for the sellers, not bad. 10,400 for the buyers. Yeah, if you still have those test cultures that I was talking about that you bought at 8,000 ISK over the course of these several months, definitely I would say try to unload them and then wait for the next buy opportunity, wait for the chart to again play with that 7,500 mark here. But this is your sell opportunity in test cultures. It took us a very long time, but you can finally unload those. And finally we have the wetware mainframes, which is of course also directly related to the structures. 3.2 million for the sellers, 3.1 million for the buyers. There is supply, so you can definitely grab what you need, but you're paying a very nice premium, probably 30% here on all of these materials. And when we're talking something that's probably gonna cost like $1 billion and much more for large structures, yeah, it's, you know, we are talking a pretty significant difference between trying to get everything now on the ground floor or having that patience for a couple of months. So yeah, very interesting PI market at this point. I'm seeing all the non-structure related ones basically coming back towards their averages, a little bit oversupplied for the market. And of course, the advanced PI materials are the big winners here. Lots of people want those. Moving on to some Tech 1 chips, 2425. And there we go. Still keeping the same ones here. Honestly, with the Imperium back mining, the minerals basically flattening out and even coming under pressure, I'm not expecting good news for the Tech 1 ship market. So the Abaddon is clearly stabilizing here as well. No longer as big fleets, battleship fleets being deployed here, and as a result, of course, the volatility is over for the Abaddon, selling for 191 million ISK and the buyers at 174, and I think that the volumes here, they speak for themselves as well. They are back down substantially. The Caracal next, that one is a little bit different. Apparently still some Caracal fleets being bought here. Pretty big volume spike as we reached 10 million ISK, which means that the sellers are back at 13.9 million. Not bad, definitely something to consider. If you're like, you know, I hope you guys understand that most of my videos are actually aimed at like newer players that want to find their way in EVE Online. This is a very good tip. You can clearly see here that the Caracal is in the meta, has been in the meta for a very long time. And so if you're looking for that first ship blueprint, something like a Caracal blueprint makes a lot of sense, because you're actually probably making some profits at these 13.9 million sell orders. The buyers at 9.4 million, they want to drive the price back down, but it's nullsec demand that is providing you with this opportunity as an industrialist to sell some Caracals at a really good price. And so it's up to you to take advantage of that. You need to be ready, I think, with your own blueprints for that as well, and you need to be able to move quickly here, because by next week I think we're back in the 10 million to 11 million range. The week after that, if more supply keeps coming in, we're back down below 10 million, and that's when another big buy might happen. So that's what makes this pretty interesting, but you need to stay on top of the meta. You need to buy the right blueprints for that. The Coveter next, that one is giving back some of the ground that it gained, so back down from 30 million to 28 million for the sellers, 26 million for the buyers, to be expected on the stability here at the moment in nullsec. Ferox is definitely another ship that is often flown by some of these big nullsec alliances. You can see here war spike up to 65 million, another spike, but this is what you need to look out for, of course, is that as supply comes in, if the volumes don't keep up here, we're gonna go back down to 50 million. 52.5 for the sellers, 49 million for the buyers. The margin has closed once again on the Ferox. Hurricane next, also a little bit of war activity, not as much as the others, but you can see here the lower activity in nullsec stabilizing the price of the Hurricane just below 50 million. 51.5 for the sellers, 47 million for the buyers. Next up here we get the Maelstrom. On its way back up, but you can see that the volumes just aren't there. So this means that just one or two sales, either to the buyers or to the sellers, is going to make a big difference on the chart. That is basically what's happening here. 185 million for the sellers, 160 million pretty much for the buyers of Maelstroms. But yeah, the volumes aren't there. Prophecy next, very flat as well, above 50 million though. It's a very good tanky ship. 54 million for the sellers, 49 million for the buyers. Also pretty good PvE ship, in my opinion. Great tank, and that, in my opinion, winning combo of missiles and drones. So the Prophecy is commanding a bit of a premium compared to the other battle cruisers. The site here next, also the war spike, although quite late actually, second part of August only, is now stabilizing back towards 8.5 million for the sellers, 7.8 million for the buyers. Pretty big supply coming in, margins definitely closing here as well. Typhoon, alright, this was flown by the Imperium quite a lot, and we had this as a result, because it's the biggest group, we had this oversupply situation, and so we dove down in price to 130 million for a battleship. That's crazy cheap, and so now we're basically in the process of recovering from that a little bit. 163 million for the sellers of Typhoons, 145 for the buyers. You're not gonna get a lot of profit from that though. And finally we've got the Vexor that for some reason shot up quite substantially as well. I'm not exactly sure why that would be, but selling for 11 million, buyers are at 10.2 million. We are of course going to close that gap, I think, back down decently quickly, especially as the mineral market, as I said, is stabilizing and coming under pressure a bit as well. So that was the Tech 1 market. There's not that much to say. The Caracol is basically your best opportunity this week. Tech 2 ships next. Let's take a look at that at 29.40. So the Tech 2 ships again last week, I was thinking we're gonna be hesitating here. We don't really know what's gonna happen with the moon mining. We don't know enough about the volumes, the expected problems, all of that sort of stuff. And here the Aries, surprisingly enough, it's not even on a major volume spike, just shot up to 33 million for the sellers, 29 million for the buyers. So here, the real question is this a major purchase from an Nullsec Alliance, or is this indeed speculation on what's going to happen with the expansion? Hard to say at this point, of course. We'll need to check the others, but that's definitely an unexpected move in the Aries, and it's on the upside. Next up, we've got the Claw. Slightly up as well, up towards 30 million as well. 30 million for the sellers, 25 million for the buyers, but this was the war spike, and after the recovery from that, I said, you know, producers aren't just gonna put everything on the market anymore. They're gonna be a little bit careful. They're gonna keep some stocks back just in case some extra volatility comes in, or if it becomes harder to produce them. Of course, they've got this cheap amount of ships that that they can get great profits on, and so as a result, we're hesitating here. And I would still say that that's this pattern, 30 million for the Claw. The Crow next, showing that pattern here as well, definitely holding well above the previous bottoms, but yeah, not as sharp as the Aries here. So 27 million for the sellers, 23.5 for the buyers. It's just not the right time. If you're looking for that surefire trade, right, which you can sometimes have, for instance with the Aries, when you play with the 20 million mark here, you can be pretty sure that you're gonna get some profits out of that at some point. But now that's just not happening with these charts in between everything. The Aries next, again very similar, basically too high to buy and probably too early to sell. You want to keep those ships that you have bought on the cheap for after the expansion. 56 million for the sellers, 51.6 for the buyers. Just nope territory. Flycatcher, exactly the same thing here, just below 70 million. So 70 for the sellers, 57 for the buyers. Pretty wide margin here. Maybe a buy order could make sense, but still at 57 million. It is, well, that could actually be okay. That's interesting how the buyer's market has dropped off for the Flycatcher here. If you're looking for still grabbing a Tech 2 ship, buy order here could be interesting. I'll try 58 million, pick it up below 60 million, and maybe it's a bit of a gamble, of course, but it's maybe an opportunity. The Heretic next, still definitely at a high point here, 67 for the sellers, 61 for the buyers. Just nope if you're looking to buy. Hound here, very similar thing, right? You can see that 20 million is what we're looking for on the chart to be sure that, all right, these hounds, I'm gonna get a profit out of those. Nope, we're below the peaks, but definitely nowhere close those bottoms. 27 million for the sellers, 25.5 for the buyers. Just nope territory. Malediction, exactly the same thing, pretty expensive actually, close to 30 million for the sellers here. Manticore, very same thing actually, 30 million once again, 31 for the sellers, 28 for the buyers. Very expensive compared to what stealth bombers normally go for. There's no need to spend too much time in the Tech 2 markets. If you're still wanting to gamble, I would look for those big margins, those cheaper buy orders, and try to pick some of those up. Otherwise, well, you're taking a really big risk if you're saying, you know what, I'm still buying some Manticores because those are going to go up in price after the expansion. The market basically is already and has already been positioning itself since the war for the expansion. Here is the Nemesis selling for 28 million, buyers 23 million. We used to make profits on Nemesis for less than 18 million when we purchased those, so that's just to give you guys a bit of a reference here. Purifier again close to 30 million. 27 to 28 almost for the sellers, 26 for the buyers. Very narrow margin, very difficult to say, yeah, I'm gonna buy some purifiers. The Saber went up to 80 million, is now falling back, but still 67 for the sellers, 62.8 for the buyers. That's again a big no. Really the only thing that I'm seeing here that could be alright is the Flycatcher, because of that 12 million, more than 12 million margin between sellers and buyers. Here's some buy orders. If you can pick them up below 60 million, that could still be an okay investment to risk, but all the others are basically way too expensive on both sides to take the gamble, in my opinion. So let's move on to the Tech 3 markets next at 34.45. We can do that. I'm thinking we're gonna start to see some oversupply. That's basically what I'm dropping prices. So here's the Confessor dropping down to 45 million ISK. It's still okay here, 24, 32, 15, 25, another 20 coming in here, but I think we're gonna start to feel that now. So here's the Confessor, slightly under pressure. Supply not all that bad, I would say, but the price is down. Next up we've got the Hecate. We'll start with the chart every time. Again, here we definitely have to give ground from the war spike, and as a result here things are quieting down. Fewer fleets are being lost, the amount will be going down, supply will probably just stay steady, to be honest. Wormhole space has actually been pretty stable, I think, so far, and as a result 50 million for the sellers, 45 million for the buyers, still pretty good, but 29, 40 and another 28 as the latest sell orders. Volumes are gonna pick up, and I think that's gonna be the name of the game in the upcoming weeks and months. Here's the Jackdaw, also clearly dipping below 50 million, selling for 40 million in fact, and that's what we don't want to see for this market, or maybe we do if we're looking to grab those next buy opportunities. 554 of them at 40.5 million. Buyers are at 40 million, the first one coming in, but this is just gonna keep this price range from ever going, well, not ever, but from going above 40.5 million in the foreseeable future. Any fresh supply is going to compete with that, and just going to start to really drive the price back down. Look at that, 40 million back down to 36.5, 36 million, 35 million. We could snowball back towards that 30 million range pretty quickly if suppliers aren't careful here. Next up we've got this Vapel, also, well, at the tail end here, a bit of buying happening for less than 40 million, but I think that that's a mistake, because look at what's coming in here again. 34, 54, 115, it's at 47 million, definitely a good price, but I think it's gonna be more than what the market can absorb at this price point. So I think that this purchase here will have been a bit of a mistake, in my opinion, because I think with a bit of patience we're gonna start to go back down substantially. Let's see if this translates in the cruisers as well. The Legion obviously stabilized below 150 here. 20-day moving average might indicate that we are under pressure. At the tail end we're hesitating though, so Legion selling for 148.3, buyers 137. The bad news, 240, 226 here, another 18 coming in. That's a lot of supply. That's definitely different from that volatile period here. The Loki next, stabilizing at around 180, 180 million for the sellers, 170 for the buyers, and the bad news, 396, 104, 143, 45. That's gonna start to drive the price back down. Proteus next, had already lost quite a bit and is going back down once again. So 122 for the sellers, 110 for the buyers, and the bad news, 12, another 78, another 13. And this is the cheapest by far Tech 3 cruiser that's on the market here, like only twice as expensive as a destroyer. That's just pretty crazy to see that there's still someone coming in with 78 Proteus. And finally here we've got the Tengu, that's actually doing okay at the tail end here, a bit above 150 million, 156 million for the sellers, 144 for the buyers, but another, look at that, 142, 308, 31, another 32 right here. So Tech 3 market, it's still strong. Definitely if you bought at the bottom prices from like before the summer, you're still making bank, but I think by now you should have sold them, and we are starting to see the oversupply situation coming in again, and so at this point, I would say if you can still take the profits, take them. Otherwise, show your patience and wait for that buy opportunity again, which, you know, this time at least, especially on the destroyers, we have a historical precedence. 30 million seems to be a pretty nice buy range, and for these cruisers, 110. You know, we've bought some of these cruisers for less than 110 million ISK at one point, which was pretty crazy, of course. So yeah, that's it for the Tech 3 market. Let's finally move on to the extra product, the request this week, Advanced Moon Materials. 3940. Like that, and it makes a lot of sense, of course. I also mentioned that I wanted to check these a little bit more often. In fact, I've done so on my own time a few times as well. I just never really spotted great buy opportunities. So let's take a look at those. I think basically we're too late. Again, winter expansion coming out in October is basically something that did catch me off guard a little bit when it comes to all of this stuff. Advanced Moon Materials. Let's go over those. Here are the crystalline carbonite selling for around 190 ISK. I think the charts are basically really what we need to look at mostly, and you see here that well, at the end of August we had a nice buy opportunity at 170, but now the market has already recovered. I would say, looking at this chart, we are a little bit above average on the crystalline carbonates. Definitely too late to buy them. The real question is what you expect is going to happen when the expansion hits and you need active moon mining for the base materials. That's a great question. You know, we might see massive speculation, which makes buying now a great opportunity. I'm just not a big fan of that. I would still look for something that's well below average to actually pick up and take the gamble on. So here are fermionic condensates. That's, for instance, one where, yeah, you're definitely too late. 1 year high at the moment, currently selling for 96,000 ISK. This is one where the market has said we're gonna buy all of it. Quite interesting. 1 year high for fermionic condensates. Fernite carbides. Again, July, August here at 150 buy opportunity. Right now we're back above that, and if you look at the entire chart, we're probably at or slightly above average. 180 for the sellers, 170 for the buyers. That's a decently okay margin. You could try some buy orders. Again, just like with the Tech 2 ships, if you still want in on this, then what I would be looking for is the wider margin and these buy orders being decently low on the chart here. A little bit high though for me, the Fernite carbides, but a decent margin on this one. Again, a little bit above average. Ferrogel next, definitely at a high point at around 40,000 ISK here. 41,000 for the sellers, 40,000 for the buyers. That's just another one of those too late, I think. Fullerite next, coming off of a very nice high point up to almost 1500 ISK, still managing to maintain above 1000 ISK here. 1100 for the sellers, 1028 for the buyers. This is the Tech 2 ship pattern, right? You've got lots of buying, you go up to a 1 year high, then we recover from that. We don't recover back to 750. Nope, the market is saying, you know what? We're gonna wait for the expansion. We're not gonna unload all the Fullerites just like that. We're gonna keep it in between the high and the lows. Hypersynaptic fibers definitely at a high point as well. Slightly under pressure at the tail ends because, well, who wants to be trading at this range now? And so you can also see that the volumes are actually down a little bit here as well. But hypersynaptic fibers, yeah, definitely too late here. Nano transistors taking off back to a 1 year high. Sellers are at 8,000 ISK. You could gamble a sell on that. Extremely wide margin, but 5,000 ISK for the buyers. Look at where that is on the chart. Definitely well above average as well. Way too late on nano transistors as well. Non-linear metamaterials. One of the first ones here that to me looks potentially interesting if the buyers are below 20,000 ISK here, because we are obviously under pressure at the tail end here. And most of the chart below 20,000 ISK. Let's take a look at that. Sellers 21.5 thousand, and unfortunately buyers 20,800 ISK. They're willing to pay that premium, so it makes it a bit more of a gamble than what I would like to see personally. But this maybe the chart still looks okay if moon mining does create massive volatility and speculation on the market. This one could be one that you might still be able to pick up at this point, I think. phenolic composites, yeah, way too late. 1 year high again, selling for 2,700 ISK. That's quite expensive. Photonic metamaterials, 1 year high again at 25,000 ISK, more than doubling the price from just a couple of months ago. Yeah, way too late again. Plasmionic metamaterials coming from a high point at 30,000 ISK, recovering, but again, look at that, stuck at 20,000 ISK, and we would like to pick that up at 10,000 if we can. So again, we are too late. Synaptic fibers. So 300 here again would be a great opportunity, but we're never gonna get close to that because we're selling close to 400. So buyers 374. We're paying that premium. It is all the prep that's happening in the market for the moon mining changes. Terahertz metamaterials clearly at a 1 year high again, so not much to say here. Titanium carbide coming off of a high at 275, giving ground, but again stabilizing at 225. Not the place you want to buy at. And tungsten carbide very close to a 1 year high again. So yeah, it's unfortunate. June, July were often apparently buy opportunities. Again, the CCP I think caught me and probably a lot of the market off guard a little bit by pushing out the expansion so quickly compared to its name calling it a winter expansion. I would have thought that, yeah, August, September would have been a good time to look into the moon materials. During the summer, you often have this dynamic of low activity here and there, but potentially some of the more organized, I'm not sure if that's the right word to use here, but some of the more dedicated players that tend to be in that high-end content, such as moon mining, often Tech3 as well, shows this pattern of being oversupplied in the summer because they're making so much, don't know what to do with it. They're bringing it to the market, but there's no one there to buy it. And that's the pattern that I was hoping for, but which would have been like August, September, and then we would still have several months to, you know, be ready and watch the speculation on what would happen in the winter expansion, which would then be like late November, early December, something like that. But that didn't happen. We've got an October expansion, and as a result, the market shot up right through August, where I would thought that we would still be able to maintain those lower prices, which you're seeing here in tungsten carbide at like 125 June and July. So that is basically what happened here. Very good suggestion, of course. We're definitely coming back to these advanced moon materials after the expansion, because that's where I think the money could still be made if you still take gambles here, but I'm not seeing that many of them that are like great buy opportunities at this point. You're taking a pretty decent gamble if you're still trying to pick these up at this point, in my opinion. And that's gonna be it for this ETH Talk then, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.